Okay, this video is about solving one-step equations using multiplication and division. Now, remember our song. If it's added, subtract. If it's multiplied, divide. To move those terms to the other side. Because we're using inverse operations, right? The inverse of multiply is divide, and the inverse of divide is multiply. So to undo one or the other, we have to do the opposite or inverse operation. Okay, the first problem we're going to look at is 7x equals 56. Okay, now when we have a variable with a coefficient and they're beside each other like this, that means multiply. So we're going to ask ourselves our critical questions. Critical question number 1, what are we solving for? Well, in this case, we're solving for x. Okay, what is on the same side of the equation as x that we need to get rid of? Well, in that case, that would be a 7. What's the 7 doing with the x? Well, the 7 is being multiplied. So what's the opposite or the inverse operation? That would be divide. So if we divide by 7, they'll cancel. If we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. Now, I want to take just a second to talk about what happens when we divide a number by itself. What is 7 divided by 7? That's 1. Any number divided by itself is 1. So what winds up happening, we say these cancel. But what really happens is 7 divided by 7 is 1. So 1 times x would leave us with that x. Okay? Up here, 56 divided by 7. 56 divided by 7 is 8. So our solution for this problem, the answer to what is x, is x equals 8. Now we can check this the same exact way that we check the problems that we did with adding and subtracting. How do we check it? Well, we substitute 8 where x was in the original equation. So 7 times x equals 56 was our original equation. But we're going to put 8 in place of x. So 7 times 8 equals 56. Is that a true statement? You bet. If it's a true statement, then our solution is correct. Okay? Our next problem is this one right here. Negative 4 equals k divided by negative 5. Now notice, this is a fraction, but it's also division. Okay? What are we solving for in this problem? Well, in this problem, we're going to be solving for... Okay, I'm having trouble with my marker. We're going to be solving for k. K is what we want to get by itself. So what's on the same side of the equation with k? Negative 5. What's the operation going on between k and negative 5? Well, in this case, k is being divided by negative 5. So what's the inverse operation? Well, the inverse would be multiply. The inverse of divide is multiply. So we're going to multiply this side of the equation by negative 5. But if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. Okay? So, basically, here's what's happening. If we multiply this, if we want to make this a fraction so we could multiply straight across, we would have k times negative 5. Well, k times negative 5 would be negative 5k. Negative 5 times 1 would be negative 5. What happens when we divide a number by itself? That's right, a number divided by itself is 1. So we say those cancel, but what's really happening is a number divided by itself is 1, and 1 times k would just be k. But on this side, negative 5 times negative 4 is 20. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. So what is k? K is 20. Now, you don't have to show this step right here. I just showed it so you would see what really happens. Okay? You could just do what we'll do in just a minute, which is just cancel them out. Alright, let's look at another problem. Let's look at 13 equals negative 2 times w. What are we solving for in this case? Oops, we're solving for W. What is with W we need to get rid of? Well, on the same side of the equation is a 2. What operation's going on between these two guys? Well, they're being multiplied. What's the inverse of multiply? Inverse of multiply is divide. So we need to divide this by that -2. Now, notice we're dividing by -2 because what is the 2? It's a negative. If we only divided by +2, we wouldn't get rid of the 2. I mean, the negative sign. We would just be getting rid of the 2. Okay, so -2 divided by -2 is 1. 1 times W is W, so we say those cancel out. But if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. Now what are we left with over here once those 2's cancel? Well, we're left with W. What is 13 divided by -2? Well, you could plug this in your calculator, or you could use a little bit of your brain power. We know that a positive divided by a negative is going to give us a negative answer. We know 2 goes into 13. Well, it won't go into 13 evenly, but it goes into 12 evenly 6 times. So we have 6, and then we have 1 left over. 6 1/2, or -6.5. Okay, either way works. And so our solution for this problem is W is -6 1/2, or W is -6.5. Okay, let's look at another problem. Here we have M divided by 3 equals -1.5. What are we solving for in this case? Well, we're solving for M. What's with M on that side of the equation that we need to get rid of? Well, there's a 3 over there. We need to get rid of that 3. What is that 3 doing with M? Well, M is being divided by the 3. The opposite of divide is multiply. The inverse operation to divide is multiply. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Now remember a while ago we showed that that would be 3M divided by 3, but what happens to the 3's? They cancel out. We know they cancel because we know we did the inverse operation. So what's left on this side? M. Now this side over here, we could plug in our calculator, we could pull out our calculator and get it, but I'll go ahead and tell you the answer is going to be 4.5. So the solution to this system, the solution to this equation, we haven't got to systems yet, the solution to this equation is M equals 4.5. Okay, let's look at another type. Okay, this has the dreaded fraction. Everybody hates those old fractions. Now, we talked about this in the addition video. There's nothing to be scared of a fraction. We know that we have calculators. We can use them if we need to. So we're solving for V here. That means we need to get rid of 5/9. Now, I'm actually going to show you 2 ways you could do this. Because we know we have these great calculators, we can divide by 5/9, because 5/9 and V are multiplying together. That means we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other. But I want to remind you of something. Think back to when you were learning about fractions. What is dividing by a fraction? What is another way of doing that? Well, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. Now, reciprocal means we flip the fraction. So like if we have, in this case, 5/9, the reciprocal to that would be 9/5. Okay, so in this case, we could do what we have just done and plug this in the calculator. Remember to use F1 to get your fractions for your calculator. And those would cancel, and we would have V equals... Okay, so I stupidly did not figure out what the answer to this was going to be. I'll have to come back to this in just a second and tell you. Because multiplying by the reciprocal actually makes it easier. Okay, so if we look at it as 5 over 9v equals 35. And we say, okay, instead of dividing by 5 over 9, I'm going to multiply by 9 over 5. Okay, but if I do it to one side, I've got to do it to the other. Now, what is 9 and 9? What's going to happen? Well, they're going to cancel. Look at these 5s. They're also going to cancel because 9 times 5 is 45. 5 times 9 is 45. That would be 45 divided by 45, which is 1. 1 times v is v. So what happens is they cancel. And we're left with v equals. Now, on this side, like I told you, this one is actually easier, which is why I can do this in my head. 5 is going to go into 35 7 times. So then I'm just going to have 7 times 9. 7 times 9 is 63. So what is my answer in this case? What's the solution to this equation? Well, the solution is v equals 63. All right, we have one last example to do. And this one looks really confusing because this time not only do we have those dreaded fractions, but we also have a fraction that our variable is in. Now this time we are solving for y, okay? Now, we can look at this one two ways also. We could look at it as, well, y is being multiplied by 4, and then the whole thing is being divided by 3. We could do that, which would make it a two-step equation. Or we could look at it like this. Anytime you have a variable in the numerator of your fraction, you can actually just pull it apart. So now, instead of it being 4 times y over 3, it's 4/3 y. It means the exact same thing. Either way, they are the same problem. Okay? They work the same way. But you could also just look at it like this. Now remember we talked just a minute ago about how we could multiply by the reciprocal. That gave us the same answer. So if we multiply by the reciprocal of 4/3, the reciprocal means we flip it over. So that would be 3 over 4. What happens to the 3's? They cancel. What happens to the 4's? They cancel. So we would be left on this side with y. But remember, if we do it to one side of the equation, we have to do it to the other. So on this side, we'd have to multiply by 3 over 4. Okay? Remember on fractions, we could plug it in our handy-dandy calculators, or we can multiply using our brain. Multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 2 is 8. So y is 15 over 8. Now, let's go ahead and do that math and get that over with. 8 doesn't go into 15 evenly. What number does 8 go into evenly? Well, 16 it'll go into evenly, but we don't have that many, so it only goes into 15 one time. How many do we have left over? 7. 1 7/8 is what y is. Or we could go ahead and plug it in and find out what the decimal would be. However, fractions are always more accurate than decimals that may have to be rounded. Okay, so this is the end of solving one-step equations using multiplication and division.